What we've done in preparing for this is we worked together to try to illuminate, if we could, with a series of questions, the context of the story of Pearl Harbor, how it resonated in Texas and through this country, and what it meant to us during World War II, and then and perhaps delve in a little bit to what needs to resonate about that today. So I'm going to read off the sheet of questions to make sure I get them exactly right, and we've got them in order.
We'll make it a conversation, because I have a feeling you know as much about this as I do, at least. So glad to have you here, Joe.
Well, thank you very much, and what I don't know, I'll do my best to make up. We'll work this out. So, thank you, and it'll be an interesting dialogue. So, I'll start with the questions, and then we'll get into a dialogue about each as we go forward, and we'll see how this goes. At the end of this set of questions, there may be audience members who want to ask add-on questions, and we'll work on having provision for that at the end as well. So keep those in your mind, and we'll have microphones ready to come out at the end to try to do that. So the first question, what about the Pearl Harbor story should resonate with audiences 75 years later?
One thing I come back to comes from my work not as an author, but as a literary agent. I wear two hats in the book publishing business. My writing has been an outgrowth of a lifelong book publishing career. And I came here in 1993 originally not only to attend your symposia, but to set up a branch office for a literary agency based in New York. And among my first clients was an old Texas Ranger, now deceased, by the name of Joaquin Jackson. As a Yankee moving to Texas, I saw him as a sort of oracle. And one thing he told me, he acquainted me with an old Texas Ranger saying, which is that no man in the wrong can stand up against a fellow that's in the right and keeps on a coming. Now you got to say that with a lot more gusto, with some cigar smoke on your breath. But this was an ethos that I think is fundamentally American. And I think when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, they learned that Americans as a nation, not just Texans, maybe Texans lead the way, but Americans as a nation embraced this idea that we are not a warlike people, but when we're provoked and when we are inalterably feeling that we're in the right, that we've been done an injustice, look out. So when Pearl Harbor was attacked, we were an agrarian country in many ways. We were a Depression era. The country was still reverberating. Its people, its families were certainly with the after effects of the Depression. But we're also, Texas, this is where the Texas part of it comes into focus for me, is that Texas has this agrarian tradition, but also industrializing. And the Pearl Harbor attack was a historical tipping point. I think pushing us on the path to war, pushing us on the path to a war effort that would mobilize not only people, but material and factories and industries. And the world's never been the same since that happened.
I totally concur with that, and there are some elements of that bring it back home to Texas in interesting ways. We have an exhibit in the Bush Gallery, Texas in World War II, that describes what was going on in Texas to some degree in a small exhibit as best we can in the space we had available, because it's a very, very big story. And we had developed that exhibit in concept during the same time the Texas Historical Commission began a major new initiative where they actually set up a whole new branch office dedicated to setting up a historical marker at every single location in Texas that had to do with World War II. And it was a single-minded focus, and Willie McWhorter took that on and worked on that until last year. And I believe we now have historical markers at every one of those locations. And there are so many of them, it's astounding. We have a map in our exhibit that was as comprehensive as we knew at the time it could be, and Willie found a few more after that. It's astounding how many Army airfields, Navy air stations, Navy airfields, training camps for the military, and of course the great artillery facilities out at Fort Bliss, and all of the things going on in Texas militarily. But the defense plants that you were describing, from ammunition plants to shipbuilding plants along the coast, from Orange to Corpus Christi, were an important part of the war. The second point in that I think is really profound is why. Well, there's two reasons really, I think. One is geography. We got a lot of space, and it's open space that is ideal for these things, and we have a lot of coastline that is ideal for developing things that are required for the ocean. And protected coast. We also had, blessedly, an awful lot of oil gushing out of the ground that was required to keep all this stuff moving already before the war started. And that was a major catalyst for making it easier to do things in Texas. But there's a final element that I think everybody in Texas should understand and appreciate, and that is politics. Because we had a huge advantage in having LBJ in Congress at the time. And he was pushing hard for getting facilities built in Texas that would help build our economy and keep things moving forward in Texas. And his advocacy for Texas in all these things certainly made a difference through World War II.
That's true. You know, politics, at the same time, Texas was not necessarily friendly to the New Deal, were they?
No.
The idea that we would have to ration gas starting in wartime was a severe provocation to Governor Coke Stevenson. He famously said, denouncing gas rationing in Texas, he says, gasoline was as much a necessity as the saddle, the rifle, the axe, and the Bible. I don't know if he threw a by God after that, but he might as well have.
Well, and Coke Stevenson knew all of those things very well, too,
right.
Absolutely. Having come in on a wagon. It truly, no question about it. But Texas also proudly supported the war effort in ways that are astounding as far as the agrarian movement was concerned.
Yeah.
And there's an awful lot of agriculture in Texas that helps sustain the war effort in ways that are profound still.
Yes, we're the arsenal of democracy. America generally was, and Texas was the granary. The farmers really upped their production, and I think the entire nation was able to, through this ethos of saving, victory gardens, this combination of production and conservation, enabled this diversion of resources into war industries.
Well, my father, who was a World War II veteran in the Navy in the Pacific, was oftentimes, at least once or twice a month, he would make his favorite meal still for us, which was, I'm not going to say the proper name, but it was cream chip beef on toast. And that cream chip beef was possible because of the great cattle production coming out of Texas as well. So it truly helped sustain the war effort all the way out to the front lines in a serious way.